everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Driscoll Decoded. My name is Angela, and I am your host for this podcast.
And my name is Tori, and I am your co-host for this podcast today. And if you believe that vaping is safer than smoking cigarettes, you're definitely going to want to tune in for this one.
And we'd like to introduce a new player into the pod, a new expert here with us today, Dr. John Roberts. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you give us a rundown on your positions at the hospital?
Sure. Well, I work at Driscoll Children's Hospital. I'm the director of the pediatric pulmonology department there. I've been here since 2011. Came down from New York, but I feel like I'm a true Texan now.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to be here today.
For the ones who may not really understand, can you explain like pulmonary and what you basically focus on, you specialize in?
Pulmonologists treat lung disease. Okay. So I'm a pediatric pulmonologist, so we treat children with lung diseases. Our bread and butter is asthma, but we take care of other diseases like cystic fibrosis, neuromuscular diseases, anything to do with the lungs, really.
Okay. So you are the most ideal expert, of course, for this episode because we are going into vaping. As we know, vaping has become a cultural trend, if anything, especially in this time, in this day and age. Cigarettes was once the, I guess, go-to, as I remember, for parents or just adults in general back then. But now it's turned into e-cigarettes, vaping. So can you explain to us what vaping is and what is in it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's interesting because e-cigarettes were actually created for very altruistic and good reasons. So and I don't know, we could put it in later, but the guy who kind of came up with it. So they were basically created initially as a tool for trying to wean yourself off of smoking cigarettes. Because as we all know that smoking, nicotine, tobacco is very addicting. So the e-cigarettes, the initial thought, I think the developer was actually trying to treat his mother. Like he said, I want to get my mother off of cigarettes because she has lung cancer and she has all these other heart disease and other problems that are related to cigarette smoking. So he said, well, what if I created something that has the nicotine in it but doesn't have all those carcinogens? And so the idea was I can get my grandmother onto this, and so it'd be healthier for her, but she would still get that nicotine kick and still be able to, satisfy her body's cravings without a lot of the other bad stuff. So that's where it came out of.
Love that.
Wow.
I did not know that.
Me neither.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is nicotine good or bad?
That's a great question. Nicotine is, I think, just an innocent bystander. Poor nicotine, So nicotine is a neurotransmitter basically that has a lot of good effects too. So nicotine can cause things like relaxation. It can decrease cravings, like for eating and drinking and things like that. And basically there are some good parts to it.
Okay, but just used in a bad way.
Well, right. But the bad thing about nicotine is that the way that it works, it causes a dependence from the body. So the nicotine hits receptors in the nervous system, and it causes the body to just want more of it because it wants to have that feeling over and over again. And there's a difference between dependence and addiction. Addiction can be something that you just want and crave because you kind of like it and you just want more of it. Dependence, when you take the substance away, it causes symptoms in the body. That's why we have the term withdrawal. So you stop smoking, and probably you all have met somebody who tried to quit smoking on their own and they just become, a monster, a different person. They have a lot of anxiety and other types of emotions like that, and they eat more, and they, all of these things are reaction to stopping the chemical reaction in the body. So the nicotine, like I said, is not principally what leads to all of the things we associate with smoking cigarettes, like cancer and heart disease. Although it's not entirely true. The nicotine itself, it's thought, may have some direct effects on the body that may lead to things like cancer. But by and large, it's the byproducts in the tobacco leaf that cause a lot of those problems. So again, the idea of taking the tobacco leaf out and just leaving the nicotine was, it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how did we get from that story that you just told of the person creating it to now of how the whole message or campaign that we always hear of, stop vaping?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated story, but I think that just to just to give a quick answer to that question, it was much easier or it was much more difficult to try to market this as a smoking cessation tool, which has, there are a lot of red tape, paperwork, a lot of things to go through with, the various health departments and state and federal regulations, that sort of thing, to get that approved, than to market this as something recreational and say, well, it's much easier to say, well, we're going to market e-cigarettes as, a way to inhale nicotine, something safer than cigarettes, and give people another option, but without having to go through those more complicated routes of, doing it for your health.
Gotcha. So now, before we start speaking more into it, how does vaping work? Like, how is it affecting our body? And
yeah, sure. Well, vaping, if you look it up, and you did,
in the chat, it said in the most basic answer, vaping is when a person breathes in a vapor made by an electronic device, often called an e-cigarette.
Right. Right. So you're inhaling vapor as opposed to smoke. And so the electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes or vapes or vape pens, there's a lot of names, probably more than I know. It's an electric device, so it kind of takes this liquid and it vaporizes it. The liquid can contain many things. Certainly it contains nicotine. It can contain things like flavonoids or flavoring liquid as well, which is very popular. They used to contain other things like vitamin E oils and things that we found out later were very dangerous. So they have made them at least somewhat more safe. Yeah. And these are vaporized using the battery in the vaping pen, and they're inhaled. Yeah.
So I remember hearing some stories about how like a vape would explode.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
While taking it in.
Yeah.
And then also like off-market vapes where now they're filled with, and you don't know, but like filled with dangerous substances in there. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things there. So, I mean, before we get to sort of the exploding pens, I think that the most, even the e-cigarettes that are approved for sale, they contain about 10 times more nicotine than a cigarette.
Oh my God.
They contain one vape pen contains more nicotine than a pack of cigarettes. So you have, what you have right away is the potential to addict a person, and especially a young person, very, very quickly.
Right.
So whereas it may take you a little bit to kind of get used to cigarettes, it's very harsh and causes a lot of coughing, and you have to get used to, I don't know how to inhale this thing. And then over time, once they're using more, eventually that nicotine addiction, that dependence will sink in. But with the vaping pens, they're much smoother. There's flavors added to them, so they're a lot more fun, I guess. And then what you end up having is, within a very short time, days, weeks, you have somebody who's already dependent on the nicotine, who's craving it.
Yeah.
Man, I remember when that first, I don't know if it was the first time it came out, but when it started really impacting like the social scenes, like I was in college during that, and it was it was like always like a room filled with
it's
vapor
with
air.
vapor clouds just constantly.
And it's crazy because I still see like just people, whether we know or just like strangers, like that's just more of the, let me just go to that one store on the corner and they have this and this and that, and it's just more accessible compared to like just like only select shops had it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on just like how it's become more part of?
Yeah, well, I think the thing about cigarettes and cigars and pipes and those kind of things is that one of the things about it is that the smoke is not very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's
like the cigarette smoke it smells, it's not very
so right, the cigarette smoke is not pleasant,
right,
so
it's not glamorous.
Somebody, I mean, when I was growing up and I'd go to restaurants and there would be smoking sections or people smoking on airplanes. Like I remember that a little bit. I'm not that old, but I do remember a little bit. And, you get used to it though. Like, even as a kid, you just get used to that because that's just that way life is.
Yeah.
If someone's smoking, you don't necessarily like it. You don't not like it. You just don't think about it. You just say, well, that's just what's happening. But, as soon as they took cigarettes off of airplanes and restaurants and kind of indoor spaces, it became way more apparent when somebody was smoking. And then the smoke, like I said, is not pleasant. It's not, it makes other people cough if you, secondhand smoke when you breathe it in, it doesn't smell good on somebody's person, their hair, their clothes. Like you can tell when someone walks in a room and they've been smoking cigarettes, but that doesn't happen with vaping. Vaping, not only is it not unpleasant like that, but it actually can be quite pleasant. You depending on these flavors that they've put into them, which we could talk about later, but they. So you can be, like you were just saying, you could be in a college dorm or a room and everybody's vaping and everybody's happy. Nobody's running out of the room because it stinks, or nobody's out in the room because it's because of bad breath or it's just, or you're coughing because of it, because it doesn't tend to have that same effect as smoke. Just like you would, if a fire is burning outside, a forest fire, anything like that, that smoke is very caustic and it's very aggravating to the lungs.
So being that it's just a total opposite of cigarettes, what are the things that vaping does to someone's body?
Okay.
Especially someone who is addicted and not addicted to it. Someone who just hits it like every once in a while compared to someone who gets a new vape every day, every week. Like,
right. Well, first, I wouldn't say that they're the opposite. I would just say, because I think that, I think it's just that you can really hide in plain sight the vaping better. Like, cause I've been walking down the street and all of a sudden the guy in front of you, there's a plume of vapor that comes from him. And you don't smell anything, don't see anything. It's just, it's just way easier to do it that way than it was where you have to take out a cigarette, you have to have a light to light it up, a lighter, matches, whatever, and then and you could smell it. So this is different. So the vaping pens, like I said in the beginning, it was a great idea, like a great thought. Like, I'm gonna have something that doesn't bother anybody. I'm gonna still get my nicotine or my oral fix because I want to inhale something, and then I'll just go along my way and live my life. But what happens is the vape pens or the e-cigarettes, doing that, it can cause several problems. One of them, we talk about inhaling anything directly into your lungs. We talked a little about hookah before, or cigarettes, pipes, anything like that. Pollution, it's going to cause problems in the lungs. The e-cigarettes are no different. So breathing in this stuff can cause direct damage and cell death to the airway mucosa, which is the lining of the airways. So you can have effects like that. There are some reports that there are some links with lung cancer and e-cigarettes as well. And it can affect other parts of the body, heart, skin, You talked a little bit about exploding vape pens. That's always a problem, a potential problem too, is that there's a problem with the device. Anything with electricity like that, you're carrying it around in your pocket. You have changes in temperature, weather, things like that. Or maybe you're putting stuff in there you shouldn't, and kind of changing the mix until you can have like direct injury. And that's certainly, it's not super common, but that has certainly happened. And then what you said before about you can, whether you have a refillable pen that you can fill it with something else like THC, marijuana, and then it's not as regulated, so you don't know really how much you're taking in.
Yeah.
And then very popular now are the disposables. So I think you can just buy them, use them, and just throw them away and get more.
So I know you, in your role, you also do go out and speak to schools. Yes, the younger generation. What are some things that you're hearing whenever you speak to them, or like they volunteer to speak to you, and then what are you also saying to them?
Sure. Yeah, I've done a few talks in some high schools and even middle schools, because as you might imagine, there's as you get older, the incidence of vaping and smoking goes up, but you do see it in middle schoolers too.
And how old is that age?
It's young.
Yeah, middle schoolers, maybe 11 to 13, 14.
Yeah.
And when I've given talks, and most of the kids have, if they may not raise their hand and say, yes, I've done it. Yeah. Some of the high schoolers might, but you do find that they at least have seen it, or they've seen people doing it, or their parents do it. Mm-hmm. And of course you can find stories. There are podcasts about it, about kids who are in high school and they get hooked on vaping. It's just nicotine at this point, and they sort of their grades start to drop. They get hooked on these e-cigarettes, and I mean that's always a story that you want to tell to teach and say, don't do this.
Yeah.
But it happens, and they, whatever trajectory they were on before to go to that great college or get recruited for sports teams, and it kind of wastes away because they get addicted to something like that.
Yeah. And of course, like, especially like, I'm just going to touch on this, like sports, because you said it affects the lungs. It affects basically how their body reacts to just like, I guess, just normal stuff, like what a sport would require. So being so dependent on this thing, it affects schoolwork. It affects the sport that they're interested in, or just anything like that.
Yeah. And they cost money. So
yeah,
if you have a full-time job and you want to vape, you probably can. But if you're a high schooler, middle schooler especially, how are you going to get your vapes? So it's kind of like the old...
How do they get them?
Yeah, well.
And see, that's the scary thing, because that goes off into like off-market stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get something straight from the
off
store.
the streets.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's probably a lot like alcohol in a way. If you're a younger person who's under the drinking age, and you find
an older sibling
or cousin, and some adult to buy it for you. And it's the same here, because we're not talking about black market stuff with this, because the e-cigarettes are generally sold in stores. There are vaping stores. There's stores just for that. I mean, certainly though, when you're getting into the illegal stuff like the THC and that, of course, that comes from a different place. And I don't know. I mean, people, if you want to get something, they're going to get it.
You can get it. Yeah. True.
So in your line of work, because you mentioned how vaping is linked to lung cancer, for instance, or just like any type of...
Yeah. Well, the most common, or for me, there's a condition called E-Valley, okay, which is e-cigarette and vape related lung injury. So it's actually direct lung injury. This was happening across the country in adults and children alike several years ago, especially with the first iterations of the vaping pens that had different ingredients in them. So they were directly killing lung cells, and people were coming into the hospital with difficulty breathing, low oxygen levels.
Crazy.
Getting admitted to the hospital. some of them becoming dependent on oxygen even after they leave the hospital. The x-ray of the lungs just looking like Swiss cheese because they're just going right through it. So this is a very real and very dangerous problem. Again, it's called E-Valley.
E-Valley.
Yeah.
Okay.
E-V-A-L-I. So, and that's one thing. And, certainly, we talk about it we have a program at the hospital with our anesthesia department because, teenagers will sometimes need surgeries or procedures. But we know that if they have a history of smoking or vaping, that there's increased risks that they're going to have problems with anesthesia, problems with the surgery, problems with their wound healing. So we have a protocol in place, for kids who are vaping to try to keep it as safe as possible and for them to have the surgeries and procedures that they need.
How much of a length of time does one need to vape for something like that to form?
That's a great question. So how long do you need to vape? I mean, it's hard to say.
Okay.
Probably relatively quickly, probably within weeks or maybe months. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So.
Weeks, that's not much time at all.
And like I mentioned before, to become addicted to the nicotine e-cigarettes is very, very quick.
Wow.
Very quick because there's such a high concentration. It's not really regulated, so because it's not a drug. So it's not like an FDA approved thing. So it's just a recreational. Yeah. So it's not regulated, or at least it wasn't. I think that there's been some changes there with the knowledge that these are very addictive and can cause medical problems.
So there's this, I hear a lot of people always say this, like, oh, well, vaping, and I don't know what type of vaping like what's being put in it, but vaping is safer than THC. Or
like vaping is than smoking marijuana cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like,
and another thing, I feel like that's a common excuse for people. Like, well, this is safer than that, so I'm just gonna stick to this and keep taking.
Kind of like a scapegoat. Yeah.
Well, I think just if you want to just pit e-cigarettes in general, whatever's in them, whether it's nicotine or THC or some homemade concoction versus, burning something like whether a cigarette, a joint, a pipe. I'm not even going to talk about the tobacco chews, or the
Zins and all that.
Yeah, the Zins, right? So that's a whole nother podcast, I think. But
for sure,
if you're going to put them head to head, I think it's difficult to do that because you can really say what are the dangers of smoking combustible cigarettes? What are the dangers of smoking a vape or vaping something? I think that both of them, if you were to make a list, are going to have a similar number of dangers.
Okay.
Some of them will overlap, like we talked about. Some of the, like lung injury for sure. I think it's
easy to be like
right.
Use that as a scapegoat.
Yeah.
Well, this is just safe.
Yeah,
because they're kind of one and the same. Then is what you're saying in a way.
Well, I think they're both dangerous for different reasons.
Okay. And
so that way, because I don't want to, it's easy to say, well, smoke anything, if you inhale anything, it's bad for you, and that's, but I think that's probably a good way to live. Like if you're inhaling something you're not supposed to, but that's not natural, like air and oxygen and things, it's probably not good for you.
Yeah.
And when you inhale things like pollution in the streets, and you can't really help that. I mean, this is your day-to-day living. Like when I lived up in New York, when I went to medical school and we did our anatomy class, most of our cadavers, most of our cadavers, when we opened them up, the lungs were kind of black.
Oh, wow.
And some of them may have been smokers, some of them not. We didn't necessarily know, but a lot of it was just like living in New York City.
Wow.
So you're going to see it in the lungs, right? So there are things we can't really help. I mean, certainly we are trying to decrease pollution, and I'm not going to get into that because there's a whole lot of politics around that. Yeah.
So
Another podcast. But we're talking about things that people choose to do. So I'm choosing to smoke a cigarette. I'm choosing to inhale e-cigarettes or vaping pens. And so these are things that are completely preventable.
Right.
But I think one of the problems, and you brought it up before, is that the e-cigarettes have really become like a social thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you smoke cigarettes, it's kind of gets smoky in the room. It stinks. If people are drinking alcohol, people get drunk and stupid, and you know, and it's not, it becomes unfun at some point. But if you're just vaping with your friends, walking down the street, it seems like just an easy thing, but it can cause a lot of problems, like I said. And there are things that we don't know yet. We don't know so much the effects of secondhand vaping like we do smoking. Like if somebody vapes and blows it in your face, how much of that is affecting you? We don't really know completely those answers. We know that it's probably not a good thing, but
that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing happened.
Right.
Just because like there's not enough research on it.
Right. Because the e-cigarettes compared to cigarettes, to smoking tobacco cigarettes, have been around way less time.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my next question. Like secondhand vaping, like vaping with children around in closed spaces. How, even though we can't see it, even though there's not like, or some we can't see and there's not like a distinctive smell, how is that you know of affecting children?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now. I think that the consensus from the medical field is don't do that. You know, don't vape when with your children around. Don't, try not to vape with other people around, especially indoors. Like keep it out of the house. We extend or extrapolate a lot from what we know about smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
But, the research is up and coming, and, I'm fairly certain that it's going to show that there are dangers in vaping around your children.
That just come out too, given how long like research actually takes.
Right.
It just came out in that aspect. Man, I feel like we've learned a lot already.
We've hit those hard burning questions, I think.
In the hospital, what would you say the percentage would be that you see in teens or young adults with lung damage?
Yeah. So we actually don't see very much.
Okay.
But we do have cases. And so I've had maybe a handful of cases each year where where somebody's been vaping and either they've had some kind of complication from surgery or anesthesia, or they've come to the hospital because they're having difficulty breathing. I do think that the newer formulations of e-cigarettes are somewhat safer in terms of causing the direct injury, but because we don't see it as often, but that doesn't change my mind that there's still a lot of inherent dangers. There have been studies looking at other systems in the body, like not just your lungs, but the skin, the neurodevelopment, autism.
Oh, wow.
And pregnancy, effects on pregnant women, maybe causing birth defects. So there is some evidence that some of these things do occur. But again, the research is ongoing and it's still in its infancy.
So signs of dependency, what are some signs that we all can be just aware of for like for the people that we care about?
Well, I mean, the dependency itself, one of the more recent statistic is showing that there actually has been a little bit of a decrease in the use of e-cigarettes in young people.
Wow.
But the ones who are still doing it are doing it more frequently. And so to answer your question a little bit, one of the signs of the dependence is increasing use. So you start by having like one every couple of weeks or something, you're with your friends, and then you're having one maybe once a week, and then you're having one every day, then you're having multiple.
Yeah.
And it's just because your body is craving the nicotine, and that whole thing about I can just stop anytime I want is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Nicotine is extremely addicting, probably up there with alcohol and some of the illegal drugs too. It's just that it's legal.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a legal drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's recreational. So it's not only legal, but you can go buy cigarettes and e-cigarettes without a prescription. You can use them wherever you want, basically, and it's okay.
Easily accessible.
And it's okay in society. You know, it makes it into movies and TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that recently too, that they're, instead of showing like back in the old days where you had people smoking cigarettes all the time, although you still see that.
Yeah.
But now you may have like that brooding detective who's vaping, because that's part of that character, you know.
Yeah.
And it's still, the problem is that it does make it look like something cool, and you know, that can also help get kids hooked.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips for parents, for anybody really, that want to help someone quit vaping or e-cigarettes or anything like that?
Parents. Yeah, parents. I would say don't talk about it with your kids, right? Because you can assume that my kid's a good kid, and they don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're all seeing it. You know, I've talked to my kids about it. They're all seeing it.
Yeah.
And whether they've tried it or not, you know, the kids may not tell you, but you have to ingrain that stuff when they're young, like even in elementary school, because it's going to start soon after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we were kids, the DARE program, the Stop Doing Drugs, I mean, I think the first time I was in one of those little sessions, I was probably a third grader.
Yeah.
Right. So I think early education for the kids, so that they know from early on that this is something that's dangerous. I think one of the things we haven't really talked about is the advertising. I think that's been a big problem.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you have, like if you think about cigarettes and menthol cigarettes, you know, menthol is not like I mean, it's a minty kind of, you feel different, you know, certainly there's problems with something like that, but that is geared to adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have flavors like licorice and bubble gum and birthday cake. Yeah. So it becomes quite obvious that they're marketing to younger crowds, even if they say no, but adults like birthday cake too. Like, sure we do. But this is obviously marketing. And, you know, same thing, same problems with cigarettes, you know, if those people read magazines or on the internet, you know, where you used to see cigarette ads back before cigarettes were really vilified. And I think at this point, there's nobody who's going to put a cigarette ad and say, you know, smoke these, it'll make you a man or make you feel.
Marlboro their advertising was crazy.
It was. And I think that's kind of gone away because society has deemed cigarette smoking a bad thing. But now vaping, it's like, well, now, you know, I can vape and it's social and I'm not bothering anybody and this is great and I'm not, it's safer than cigarettes. It's not causing all the heart disease and cancer and things. But, you know, having those advertisements all over the place, it was just changing from cigarettes to vaping, and it's still going to hit those kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like now, like social media is out there, like everyone's just showing off everything, and it's basically like their own type of advertisement right there.
No, and that's a great point, because if you look at the pens themselves, you could put up some pictures. You know, some of them look really cool.
They're pretty.
They are. Some of them look like pens. Some of them look very sleek. Like they have designed a pen for every type of personality.
Man.
Yes. Yeah. So true.
We all remember, like, even though like if might feel cool or might satisfy that little need or just be with like that in crowd, what it's silently doing to your body overall. And I think it's just like something that we always have to learn as we're growing up, like wow, some things feel so good in the moment, like this one, this is a silent smell, it's a silent look, but it's silently also doing something inside that might not come into effect or come out until like we're in the hospital, and then it really affects us.
Right.
Yeah.
One more thing before we wrap up. Do you have any resources that anybody could use if they're wanting to quit, or support groups, or just anything of that measure?
Yeah. Well, the American Lung Association has great website
Okay.
That has a lot of information and materials about vaping and also about quitting programs. The state of Texas has a Texas Quit, which deals with quitting smoking cigarettes and vaping as well.
Nice.
I'm sure other organizations, American Heart, like there's a lot of interest in getting people off of these vape pens, so that you can find. We have information in our office.
Okay.
Yeah, like, for our patients and parents. So there's a lot of information out there but it's like anything else. You have to want to quit first.
Yes.
Yes. No, very much agreed. I think I definitely learned a lot
Oh yeah.
here.
Me too.
I think as a recap, what we learned was, and feel free to bring in, one, it's not as loud as a cigarette, whether that's the smell or the look or everything like that, but it is doing something to your body. And
Sure.
whether they feel the effects of that today, tomorrow, next month, or even in the next 5 years, vape is very addictive because it's 10 times more than the usual cigarette. And it's that turnaround of wanting more and more is just getting the time lapse is just getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too to recognize what you're seeing on the internet and, certain pieces of marketing too, just being aware of what you're ingesting.
Yeah. And also in this day and age where I think there's a lot of universal anxiety for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about, but
True.
there's wars going on, there's politics, there's artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So you put those all together, it's a very stressful society that we're living in right now. And I think that we don't want to lose sight that e-cigarettes may very well be adding to that stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's easy to blame other things and say, well, I'm using these e-cigarettes because I'm anxious and I need something to help me relax and feel better. But as the person becomes more and more addicted and dependent on these things, I think the e-cigarette actually becomes one of the main players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like, now correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like whenever someone indulges in the e-cigarette in any type of form, of course it affects, the brain in a way, but like it kind of blocks the reality of what is happening. And so whenever they're not
Become numb to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whenever they're either trying to stop, a vaping or smoking in general, that it's harder to adjust to reality or adjust to what's happening because their brain was put on pause, I guess. I'm trying
No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
For sure. It's almost like it's like you're in the moment doing it, but you're not realizing what you're doing kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, maybe so. I think, why do we turn to substances? In general, it's a big question. Like, why do people drink alcohol? Why do we smoke cigarettes? Why do people turn to drugs? I think sometimes there are lots of different reasons. Sometimes it is peer pressure and you're doing it because your friends are doing it and you're 12 years old and that's what 12-year-olds do. Sometimes it's to get away from your realities because it makes you feel a certain way. And I think that we need to teach kids from a young age like other ways of making themselves cope and feel better about themselves and about the world around them without having to turn to external substances. And I think that nicotine is one of the big ones. Yep. And then the e-cigarette has created a way to get way more of that nicotine into people. And I think it's just kind of criminal, to allow these things just to be available for anyone who's over 18 or who can find someone over 18 to buy it for them.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep. Agreed.
Man, well, thank you, Dr. Roberts, for joining us. It was very informative, but very essential for this conversation to happen, especially for our viewers and for our audience. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes. Thanks for being here.
Welcome.
To talk more about all the other ones that we said could be interesting.
Yes.
Episode.
Exactly.
And make a nicotine series.
Any questions? What did you say?
A nicotine series.
Nicotine series. Yeah.
1, part 2, part 3.
Part 1, part 2, part 3.
No, I remember they were what do you call those, PSAs, the public service announcements with about cigarettes and nicotine when I was a kid, like trying to get us to not do it. And
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Those needs to be rebranded and brought back.
Let's bring those back.
I think there's probably some stuff out there, and it's different because I grew up just with TV. Now you have
Everything.
internet, YouTube,
All
TikTok.
at your fingertips.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, things I don't use, but I think that a lot of people do.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for this episode, and we hope to catch you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Spotify and follow us on social media too.